Television frontman Tom Verlaine dies at 73. Guitarist Tom Verlaine, who rose to fame in the 1970s New York punk scene as the frontman of rock band Television, has died at the age of 73. In their heyday, Television scored 3 UK top 40 hit singles and were acclaimed for their albums Marquee Moon and Adventure, but they had more success in Britain than their native US and split in 1978. Verlaine's death was announced by Jessie Paris Smith, the daughter of longtime associate and collaborator Patti Smith. She did not specify a cause, saying that he died after a brief illness. Verlaine was considered one of the most skilled musical practitioners to emerge from the now defunct CBGB's club in New York's Bowery, where their contemporaries included Blondie, the Ramones, and Talking Heads. Although they came to prominence because of the punk movement, their music was more complex than that of their rivals, with Verlaine and fellow guitarist Richard Lloyd trading lengthy solos and intricate jazz-influenced riffs. Verlaine was born Thomas Miller in New Jersey, but adopted his stage name in homage to the French symbolist poet Paul Verlaine. After Television split, he released a string of solo albums, with the song Kingdom Come inspiring a rare cover version by David Bowie on his Scary Monsters album. Television reformed in 1992, releasing a self-titled third album, and were sporadically active in later years, hailed as a prime influence on the alternative rock of the 1980s and 1990s. Among those paying tribute to Verlaine was Mike Scott of the Waterboys, who tweeted, "Tom Verlaine has passed over to the beyond that his guitar playing always hinted at. He was the best rock and roll guitarist of all time, and like Hendrix, could dance from the spheres of the cosmos to garage rock. That takes a special greatness." Will Sargent, guitarist of Echo and the Bunnymen, said, "Tom Verlaine's playing meant the world to me. If I ever played anything that sounded like him, I was happy. He sent me on my path as a guitarist. Thank you, Tom." Biography. Verlaine was born Thomas Miller to a Jewish family in Denville, New Jersey on December 13, 1949. He moved to Wilmington, Delaware with his family at age of 6. He began studying piano at an early age, but switched to saxophone in middle school after hearing a record by Stan Getz. Verlaine initially was unimpressed with the role of the guitar in both rock music and jazz, but was inspired to take up the instrument after hearing the Rolling Stones' 19th Nervous Breakdown during his adolescence, at which point he began a long period of experimentation to develop a personal style. A later musical influence of Verlaine's became jazz musician Miles Davis's Electric Period recordings, particularly the Japanese LPs Agartha (1975) and Dark Magus (1977), which he was able to obtain as imports. Verlaine also had an interest in writing and poetry from an early age. As a teen, he was friends with future bandmate and punk icon Richard Hell, or Richard Myers, at Sanford School, a boarding school which they both attended. They quickly discovered that they shared a passion for music and poetry. After one failed attempt, Verlaine, with Hell, succeeded in escaping from school and moved to New York City. He then created a stage name, a reference to the French symbolist poet Paul Verlaine. He is quoted as having said that his name was inspired by Bob Dylan's name change and was a way of distancing himself from his past. He and Hell formed the Neon Boys, recruiting drummer Billy Ficca. The Neon Boys quickly disbanded after failing to recruit a second guitarist despite auditions by Dee Dee Ramone and Chris Stein. They reformed as Television a few months later, finding a guitarist in Richard Lloyd, and began playing at seminal punk clubs like CBGB and Max's Kansas City. In 1975, Verlaine kicked Hell out of the band for his erratic playing and behavior, and they released their first single with Fred Smith replacing Hell. Verlaine dated poet and musician Patti Smith when they were both in the burgeoning New York punk scene. Television released 2 albums, Marquee Moon and Adventure, to great critical acclaim and modest sales before breaking up in July 1978. Verlaine soon released a self-titled solo album that began a fruitful 1980s solo career. He took up residence in England for a brief period in response to the positive reception his work had received there and in Europe at large. In the 1990s, he collaborated with different artists, including Patti Smith, and composed a film score for Love and a 45. In the early 1990s, television reformed to record one studio album, Television, and a live recording, Live at the Academy 1992. They have reunited periodically for touring. Verlaine released his first new album in many years in 2006, titled Songs and Other Things. Verlaine died in New York City on January 28, 2023, after a brief illness at the age of 73. Collaborations. Verlaine was in discussion with Jeff Buckley to produce a second album before Buckley's death by drowning in 1997. Verlaine guested as guitarist on numerous releases by other artists, including the album Penthouse by the band Luna. He played on Patti Smith's Grammy-nominated Glitter in Their Eyes from her 2000 album Gung Ho. This was not the first time Verlaine had collaborated with one-time romantic partner Smith. 4 years earlier, he played on the song Fireflies from her 1996 album Gone Again, and in the 1970s, he played guitar on her debut single Hey Joe and on Break It Up from her debut album Horses. He also co-wrote the latter song with Smith. He played with Smith in 2005 for a 30th anniversary concert of Horses in its entirety, which was later released on CD. Verlaine was part of the $1 Million Bashers, a supergroup also featuring Sonic Youth musicians Lee Ronaldo and Steve Shelley, Wilco guitarist Nels Cline, Bob Dylan bassist Tony Garnier, guitarist Smokey Hormel, and keyboardist John Medeski. Their work appears on the original soundtrack to I'm Not There, a biographical film reflecting on the life of Bob Dylan. In 2012, Verlaine collaborated with former Smashing Pumpkins guitarist James Iha on his second solo album, Look to the Sky. Guitars. Throughout his career, Verlaine played a variety of Fender guitars. Most famously, in the heyday of television, he played a Fender Jazzmaster and a Fender Jaguar through Fender and Vox amps. These guitars were an unusual choice for a rock musician at the time. Verlaine is credited as having been instrumental in bringing what were seen as surf guitars, the Jaguar and Jazzmaster, into the rock arena. Verlaine is pictured inside the compilation The Miller's Tale, playing both types of guitars. Recently, at solo concerts and at television concerts, Verlaine played a guitar built in the style of a Fender Stratocaster that was modified with Dan Electro lipstick pickups and fitted with a Fender Jazzmaster neck. Guitar style and effects. Verlaine was an advocate of guitar techniques and recording processes including close miking, delay, reverb, slap echo, phasing or flanging, tremolo, etc. Television's first commercially released recording, Little Johnny Jewel, saw Verlaine, in defiance of common practice, plugging his guitar straight into the recording desk with no amplification. Verlaine rarely employed heavy distortion. Vibrato was a large part of Verlaine's style, and he made extensive use of the Jazzmaster's unique vibrato arm. In terms of guitar scales and note selection, Verlaine used the Mixodylan and minor pentatonic scale with clear blues influences, similar to many contemporary rock and roll artists. Verlaine distinguished his style mainly in choice of phrasing, often choosing to play slower and less technically demanding riffs than many contemporary lead guitarists. Verlaine used a thin pick and heavy strings, gauges 0.50 to 0.13, and turned down a half step or more. In contrast to most modern rock guitarists, he used a wound third string. Verlaine usually played with the bridge pickup on, but picked over the neck pickup. This, according to him, gave a full yet clear sound. The development of Verlaine's style likely was influenced by the way he learned to play. He told a Guitar Player interviewer in 2005, "I never played guitar along with records, so I never learned all the speed licks everybody gravitates to when starting out. I know 19-year-old guitarists who can play Danny Gatton solos note for note. They don't really know what notes they're playing, but they do them flawlessly." Tom Verlaine, influential guitarist and songwriter, last words before he died: "Death should take me while I'm in the mood. Everyone grieves in different ways. For some, it could take longer or shorter. I do know it never disappears. An ember still smolders inside me. Most days, I don't notice it, but out of the blue, it'll flare to life.